She fought for what she believed in.
So what does all that mean? Well, it means is like people don't, if I say the word common law to somebody, they think, oh, it's the law of the common people. Well, it's not the law of the common people. Common law means judge-made law, as you know. And that's what everything is. Everything that there is judge-made law. And then you can pass all the statutes you want. In California, in 96, they had a voter initiative, 3 strikes you're out, jail for life, no exceptions, blah, blah, blah. And California Supreme Court made an exception because they felt listen. The best one is, and I love John Roberts. Not just because he was born in 1955 in Buffalo, New York, right next to where I was born in 1955 in Buffalo, New York. Not just because of that. Okay? But because he's a decent human being and he understands that everybody's full of it. The world is just shades of brown because everybody's full of it. And you need to be full of it in the right way. And there is positive direction of jurisprudence generally, and there's things that are not conducive to a positive jurisdiction. So what Roberts did, anyway, let me just talk about the Second Amendment. So what happens is that as we go through situations, in 1963, the right to counsel was under the Sixth Amendment. Okay, was first made obligatory in the states in Gideon versus Wainwright. There's a movie, documentary, Gideon's story, Gideon's tale, and all that stuff on TV. He was a self-represented prisoner somewhere, and but the state wouldn't buy him, wouldn't pay for a lawyer. So, he goes through the state system and says, well, yeah, you got a right to a lawyer. Well, we're not going to pay for it. I mean, you think Thomas Jefferson, John Jay, and George Washington, and Benjamin Franklin, and those fellas thought about right to counsel, meaning you get a free lawyer? No. They didn't think about that. But anyway, so Mr. Gideon, or whatever the hell he is, I don't know if it's Gideon or Wainwright, one of them. I think it's Gideon, because it's Gideon's son. Said, no, not only am I entitled under the Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution to a lawyer, but I'm entitled to you having to pay for it. I can't afford one, because otherwise the phrase is meaningless.
Right.
I mean, you can say it all you want, but if nobody can afford it, then
okay,
whatever. See you. Here's your, take your toothbrush, please, and see you later. In about 20 years. So the Supreme Court first had to incorporate the Sixth Amendment's right to counsel on the states, and when they do that, when the courts incorporate these constitutional provisions of the states, the analysis they go through isn't whether or not the founders thought that it would be a good idea. It has nothing to do with what the founders thought. They look at it because the standard is whether or not in any civilized place in the world that guarantees fundamental freedoms would this right exist. That's the standard. And if you don't believe me, read McDonald versus Chicago. It's a 2010 U.S. Supreme Court case. And McDonald versus Chicago says just that. And the person that's saying it is the most pro-gun, the most conservative guy in the court, Samuel Alito, Justice Alito. And when you read that, you realize that all the horse shit that you've been hearing from Ted Cruz and little Marco Rubio, who are both lawyers about the original Constitution, is just horseshit.
Yeah, original intent doesn't factor into it.
The original intent is that there isn't the original intent.
Right. Yeah.
That's the intent. The original intent is, it's the common law tradition. It's the common law of England is expressly adopted by reference, incorporated by express reference in the body of the Constitution itself.
Right.
I
So-
started suing the police.
So getting
And-
back to the woman in Laguna Beach with
So
the
anyway,
Mace
what,
case.
yeah, this is what happened. This is the weird thing that happened. What do you want to know?
Okay, so
What happened?
the Mace case is what propelled you into suing the police, because you spent your career suing the police, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, all of it. Yes.
Yeah.
37 years.
Mm-hmm. And do you mind telling me how you feel about the police? We discussed that the other night, and I want to know if you feel comfortable sharing that with your viewers, with my viewers, rather. It's okay. You're in good company. You can tell them.
It's not that. No, I don't want to be unfair to them either. Let me just start off by saying this: give somebody a gun and a badge, and a car, and a radio, and a uniform, and go set them down at Watts, and tell them to keep the peace, and tell him that here are the constitutional standards for stopping somebody, for interrogating somebody, for restraining them when you're interrogating them, whether it's sitting them on the curb or standing them on their head or making a pinata out of them, and tell them about how long you can keep them at the curb, how long you can ask about their friends, whether or not you can demand identification, whether or not you can run them for wants and warrants without any cause, whether or not you can search his car, whether or not you can touch, pat him down, whether or not you can interrogate his friend or stop his friend or request ID from his friend just because they're there, or whether or not the circumstances warrant investigation of what's called criminality afoot, which is like you just committed a crime, or you're just about to commit a crime, or you're committing a crime, that kind of thing. Which is a bunch of horse shit to begin with. I mean, as Justice Douglas said in 1968, to give the constable more power than the magistrate is to take a long step down the totalitarian path.
Exactly. Truer words have never been spoken.
Right, and so the problem with, since 1968, which was a pretty messed up year, with Terry vs. Ohio, 392 U.S. 1, the worst case ever. It was an 8-1 decision. It was in the midst of all the riot.
Right. Vietnam.
Well, Martin Luther King gets whacked.
Right. And
April.
Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, yeah.
June.
It was a messed up year. Very messed up year.
The next month, after June, there was a riot at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and Mayor Daley's police were
Chicago 7.
getting in their batting practice. And then the next month, there was there was riots.
Right.
It was,
That's
it was
right.
a big,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but Justice William O. Douglas, who was the only dissenter, and Terry said those words that I said.
Right.
The Constitution says probable cause. It doesn't say reasonable suspicion. So a judge can only issue an arrest warrant or a search warrant upon probable cause, not reasonable suspicion. But a cop
Right. A cop, it's different. Lower
can
standard.
make.
Yeah.
Well, things evolve and we don't even know it. It's like if you saw a cousin when they were 5, and then you saw them next time when they were 25. They don't look the same.
Right.
But if you see them every day, you don't notice the change.
It's like the frog being boiled in the pot and not knowing it. Yeah. You're right. It's a chipping away.
So the problem is that what would have been outrageously unreasonable heretofore is now commonly accepted.
Right.
Before 1986, if a cop pointed a gun at you and told you to get on the ground, he had not only did he have to have probable cause to believe you committed a crime, but probable cause to believe that you committed a recent dangerous one, like a bank robbery, because that's what
Right.
it was.
Bank robbery is the standard. Right.
It was U.S. versus Buffington. That's what the case was. And so what happens is that this is what people don't realize. There's something called the Exclusionary Rule. Exclusionary Rule is a rule that says that if the cops unlawfully obtain evidence that, in violation of the United States Constitution, that you can prevent the prosecution from using that evidence against you in a criminal proceeding, not a civil one, but a criminal one. And the problem is that because judges don't want to let the guilty guy go free, the law's warped and twisted to reduce your level of constitutional protection so the guilty guy won't go free. And what was heretofore, in other words, if the judge has got a child rapist and the cops search the garage of the rapist without a warrant, and the circumstances weren't an emergency such that it excused the warrant requirement, search his house, and the judge knows that it's an open and shut, black and white case where the U.S. Supreme Court has commanded repeatedly, and all the appellate courts, that evidence of the body be excluded because obtained in law in violations of the United States Constitution. They're just going to say, well, guess what? This particular entry in this particular way at this particular time, under this particular exception to the warrant requirement, is going to allow the evidence in. And what you do is you're chopping away at the constitutional protections, not because you want to strip protections from the innocent, but because you don't want the guilty to walk free because of the mistake by the constable. That's what's going on. That's what's been going on
forever.
Forever.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what's been going on. Well, not forever. Since 1961.
Okay.
61 was Map vs. Ohio. People don't know this, but prior to 1961, if you were in Los Angeles and the cops were walking down the street and kick your door in and grab whatever and prosecute you for it, and there's no excuse not to have a warrant, there's no federal exclusionary rule. Mm-hmm. There's maybe a state exclusionary rule, but no federal
one. Right.
No. California, there is no state exclusionary rule.
Right.
It was a 1980 voter.
It was a proposition.
Yeah, it was a Prop 8.
Which is terrible.
Called Truth and Evidence.
Was I no woman in this life? Short upon the earth now was her time. Of all the seeds she'd sown and the people she had known, deeply did she touch the soul of mine. She called a spade a spade. She stood on the edge of reason, and even faced with death until their final dying breath. She fought for what she believed.